Hello everyone. In today's lesson, we're going to take a look at the question, how can we edit digital images? Which is all part of our week 2 learning objective, right? We want to create that instructional image portfolio this week. And today we're going to add in some images edited with computer software. Now, before we get into today's technology, I just want to talk a little bit about photo editors and kind of what's out there. There are a ton of different options for photo editors. There's a lot of free ones that require accounts, ones that require purchase, some that require a subscription model, right? There's all sorts of photo editors out there. Some of the most mainstream come from Adobe, which is a subscription-based model these days. Most of you have probably heard of Photoshop. That tends to be the leader in the industry, but Adobe also has Lightroom, InDesign, and Illustrator that are other options for editing photos. Okay, Lightroom is kind of a lighter option for Photoshop, a bit of a minimalist approach. InDesign is really good for editing documents, and Illustrator is good for kind of generating images, and if you're going to be a little more artistic with your image editing. There's also the classic, right? The old school option, when in doubt. Most computers have Microsoft Paint, so if you just need a quick edit, maybe Microsoft Paint is an option. But today we're gonna walk through some different photo edits in a free editor I found that seems to be a pretty high quality, which is called GIMP, and you'll be able to download that at gimp.org. But we're gonna take a look at that today and some different techniques in that software, and you can see a picture here of GIMP in action. Now, when you first open a photo editor, you might feel a little overwhelmed because there are a lot of tools available. But don't worry, because we're going to go over some of the basics today. We're going to take a look at some basic transformations, specifically, how do we crop a photo, resize it, rotate it, reposition it, right? Those types of actions. We're also going to look at adjustments. Right? How can we tweak the brightness, the contrast, the color, saturation, sharpness, things like that in a photo, and what does that do to our photo? So we're going to take a look at those tools. And finally, we're going to look at how to layer images. Okay, layering is really useful with photo editing to do things like remove backgrounds, combine pictures, or to add secondary structure. We talked about yesterday, things like text or shapes, that sort of thing. Now, before we get into today's lesson where we're going to look at some different photo editing, we're going to look at them in the photo editor that is GIMP. Stands for the GNU Image Manipulation Program. To download GIMP, if you'd like to follow along in this program, feel free to use another one. If you have access to Photoshop or another editor you prefer, that's totally fine. But if you'd like to download GIMP, just go to gimp.org. There's a red download button. And I clicked on this big yellow button that says download GIMP directly. That'll download to your downloads folder, and then you can run that setup, and you should be good to go. Okay, hopefully you're able to download GIMP correctly. If you have any issues with that, please reach out to me via email or web canvas. But here is the program you're going to see when you open it up. Probably one of the first things you'll notice is kind of how much is going on here. We have kind of our work area in the middle. We have some different filter options to the right and a panel to check our layers. And then we have a toolbar in the top left and some details on that tool as well. Okay, so let's start to look at what some of this is and kind of how to navigate it. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit here so we can see these tools with our magnifier. And here you see kind of a host of tools in the top left. To start off, we have our movement tool. And notice that right under the move tool, it says also in the group alignment. So in this option is kind of your movement setup. You have both the move tool and the alignment tool. So if I left click it, I will get the move tool. If I right click this tool, then I can select alignment instead if I wanted to align certain things together. Okay, so right now I'm just kind of trying to show you how to navigate this menu. Left click to use the tool, and right click to change. So like we can opt between selecting things as rectangles or ellipses with that second box. Okay, here we have the lasso, the free select tool if I wanted to select specific things. Okay, lasso allows you to kind of click to select and wall off a region. And if I right click, I can switch that to scissors and foreground. Okay, so we're going to look at some of these tools in a sec. I just kind of want to go over them. Other key ones that we're going to care about. Fuzzy select is very good. Okay, we're going to be using that here today. Cropping is very useful. Here we have kind of the transformations tab, right? If I wanted to resize things, I would use scale. Okay, I have the ability to rotate. We can do other transformations like a shear or a flip. Okay, so kind of lots of options here that we're going to check out. And variety of art tools as well. You get the bucket, you get the different paint brushes and pencils and so forth, an eraser tool. Okay, so a lot of this, hopefully you guys have seen before. If it's all new, that's okay. We're gonna walk through some of it. But these are this is our toolbox, right? This is the ways we have to affect our image. Okay, and remember we can right click to kind of pick between those. Most of the tools we will need will be either here or in the different drop-down menus up top. Okay, so to start, we're going to file and open an image here in a second. Okay, there's a selection pane that allows us to select all sorts of different things. We're going to use select invert a little later today, so that's where that is when we get there, select invert. But yeah, you have a lot of options with photo editors. And part of the process is just kind of learning how everything works. A lot of these tools are similar across platforms. Okay, so this lasso, this magic wand are going to be in any Photoshop tool as well. Right, the different selection options. Most of this stuff is industry-wide, and then it's just how do they execute those tools? How easy is the UI, right? That's the difference between editors. And some tools might be in one editor but not in another, but usually they'll have a lot of these common ones that we're going to talk about today. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's zoom out, and then we're going to take a look at some different techniques here. Now, before we get started with our image editing, we're going to need an image. Feel free to use some of the pictures you took yesterday. You can upload them to your computer. And then we're just going to go to File, Open, find those images, or you can just find another stock image and download that from the internet if you'd rather. And then open that up. Right, once you have your image uploaded, the first thing you can do is make some adjustments. A lot of the adjustments available in GIMP are in this colors drop-down menu. So in the top left, I'm going to open up colors here. And you can see we have kind of lots of options to adjust our photo. Color balance, color temperature, hue chroma, and so on. So I'd like you to start off, let's play with the color balance of the photo a little bit. Okay, so by opening that color balance, we get 3 sliders. Okay, these are RGB sliders. So we can tweak how much red, how much green, and how much blue is in the photo, and whether we're replacing it with cyan, magenta, or yellow. So what I'd like you to do is upload a photo and just kind of play with these sliders, right? What does it do if I add more red to the photo? Or if I have less green and more magenta, right? Or maybe more blue. And you can see by tweaking these, we're tweaking the color values in the photo, and you can really make some cool effects. Maybe we want kind of a goldish hue here. Something like this. We can hit OK. And now we've made that edit to our photo, and we've adjusted what that image looks like. We have lots of other options. We could take a look at color balance like we just did. We could look at the hue saturation and adjust values here. Whether we want things to be saturated, more saturated, or less saturated, if we want kind of that muted look. Maybe something like minus 30. This looks pretty good. Okay, so we've now tweaked our colors and then dimmed them a little bit. We can also take a look at things like the brightness and the contrast. Once again, we just have sliders for everything here. We can also enter these values and type them in, or you can just use those sliders. You can see more brightness. We get that brighter image, or we can go maybe a little darker here. The contrast adjusts how well we're kind of drawing those lines and changing from color to color. Right? If we have no contrast, we get this kind of grayed out photo, and too much, we start to get really bright. So maybe we'll add a little bit of contrast, something like this. Okay, I'm not a professional photo editor. If you want to really get into the details on this stuff, you're probably going to have to check out some tutorials online, but that's fine. My goal is just that you know where these options are and you can start tweaking your photos and playing with these and kind of starting to learn more. Okay, but to get started with, we're just making a series of adjustments here, trying to clean this photo up, maybe make it look a little better than it did before, maybe to draw out certain features, that sort of thing. Okay, but here's a good start, I think. Okay, now that we have our adjusted image, we can start to take a look at the picture as a whole. Right? Is this the picture we want? Do we want to cut it down some? Right? Do we like where these borders are? Do we like the framing of this image? And if we don't, if we want to tighten things up, maybe zoom in some, what we can do is utilize that crop tool. Okay. Now crop is in our toolbar. It is the fifth one over. It looks like a rectangle. Notice we get some options here on the left on how we want to use our crop tool, but as soon as we hit it, it is ready to go. And to crop something is as simple as dragging and dropping. And this just allows us to kind of resize the photo or reframe the photo. Something like this might be pretty good. Maybe you really want to focus on the horse. Okay, we can click the corners to kind of resize. Maybe instead of a center photo, we want something that's still a little more offset. And maybe the cowgirl is our focal point, something like this. Once we're happy with our new borders to crop, all you have to do is hit enter. And now we have tweaked our image to be that smaller image. Okay, we've changed our borders here. Okay, next I'd like to get some things that we can add to this photo. And the way GIMP works with your photos is it just kind of stores them at the top in tabs. So let's open a new photo now. I'm going to open a photo of cow. We got a cowgirl. Now we need to add some cows to the photo. Okay, and notice we have these tabs at the top that allow us to kind of freely switch between. Okay, so now we have our new image open. Let's take a look at how to remove some of this background. Now, there are a variety of ways to remove the background of an image. One way is to select the background and hit delete or cut. Another way is to select the image that you want and cut that out. Okay, so we're going to look at kind of how both those options work here today. The first thing I should note is to zoom in and out. Is there a button? I don't see a slider. There's probably a slider somewhere here that I'm missing, but you can also just hold Control and use your mouse wheel to zoom in and out. Okay, so let's say in this picture, what we want to do is select all of this background here so that we can cut that out and just have our cow. Okay, there's a variety of selection options. Okay, I can use shapes to start. Maybe you grab your rectangular, select, and the first thing we do is we start cutting away chunks here. Maybe you don't want anything on the left here. We can delete that. Okay, and we'll just go through with rectangles here and kind of clean up the edges of our photo. Okay, so this is a good start here. But notice as we get tighter, that rectangle is not really going to do it. We could zoom in real close, right, and draw little rectangles as we go. Or maybe things are easier if we're using the ellipse tool instead to cut things away. Okay, but we also have some other tool options. One is we can look at our fuzzy select tool, which will try to select similar regions. Okay, so notice if I click the light blue where the sky was, since the blue is a really different shade than our cow, the program has picked up most of that blue for us. Okay, so we can utilize this fuzzy select tool to pick essentially like-minded parts of the image. Okay, notice as we get closer to the cow, we get a different shade of blue. It's a little lighter here than over here. And so the computer's not quite sure if this should be included or not. So if you'd like to include more, what you can do is hold Shift and then keep using your tool, and it will just add on to your selection. So if I hold Shift and click there, I've cut more of that cow away. Okay, the top looks pretty good here. If we keep going, maybe we'll go down here, start to select some of this. Okay, you can drag or click a lot at once, but you got to be careful because sometimes you might click, right, your image, and now you've selected too much. So remember, you can always hit, right, Edit, Undo, or Control Z if you accidentally get your image here. But like this, we can just continue to try to select everything on the outside here. Okay, and if we do that and we go all around our cow, what we can do is select everything. And then once we have that background selected, we can just hit delete. Cut that away. Okay, so I'm not going to show you the entire thing here because this does take a little bit, but we're going to cut now to a picture of that cow with that background removed. Okay, now we've cut out the background of our cow. Okay, we haven't done an amazing job, but a good enough job to kind of show you the basics today. Now, if we want to take this cow and take him out of the image and put him into another image, first what we have to do is separate the cow from this white background. So right now we do have a background. It is just a white color, but it is still there. Okay, so if we want to select our cow, since we've cut away this background, I think the easiest way to do that is to use our fuzzy select tool. Okay, the fourth tool over. And if we just click our background, it should select anything of the color white in that background. And you can see we get that nice barrier showing our cow here. There are a couple spots we need to add in. You notice in the top left, we're just missing that corner a little bit, so I'll hold Shift and add that in, as well as the bottom left. And we'll grab all that as best we can here. And there's also a little gap if you look inside the cow between his legs. There is some white area here. Some of that background we can grab up. Okay, so not great boundaries on this edit job, but good enough to show you the basics. Okay, so now we've selected our background. We've selected all the white in the image. If I want to get rid of that, or if I want to just select my cow, what we can do is change our selection. Okay, right now we've selected the background. If I go over to my select tab in the top left, hit select and invert, now our selection has gone from the background to selecting just the cow. Okay, so we've swapped from the background to our primary structure. From there, we can copy, we can cut that cow out depending on what needs we have. Okay, we can just go to edit, either copy or cut. Control C, Control X works here as well. Let's just copy this for now. And let's repaste it in the same image. Notice when you paste something in GIMP, it will give you a temporary layer. So if we look in the bottom right, we see our layers here. We have our original layer, cow.jpg, and then our new floating layer, right, that we pasted in. We can click these eyeballs if we want to hide one to see what our image looks like. If we hide our pasted layer, nothing happens. If we hide our cow, notice nothing's quite there yet. So what we have to do with our floating layer here, it's still temporary for whatever reason, we need to make this its own layer. So what I'm going to do is right click that pasted layer and hit add to new layer. Okay, now we have our pasted layer there. So you can see if we hide our original cow, we have the new cow in that backdrop, right, with that pasted layer. And notice now we don't have the background. As you can see, the kind of that checkerboard pattern. This is showing us that there is nothing there. We just have this cow here. Okay, so now what we've done is we've successfully cut out that background and we've made this cow into a layer that we can insert into another image. Now, that's one way to select a structure, right? Is to kind of cut away the background and then pick that background structure and then use the invert option. Another way is we can just kind of sketch out exactly what we want to take out of the photo, right? We can use the selection tool, rectangles or ellipses, or what I'm going to show you is this lasso called the free select tool, okay? So the free select tool allows you to either, you can hold and draw around something, or you can click like points. Okay, so if I were to click points, I can essentially chop our image into polygons. And then if I hit enter, it will select that area. Okay, the other option is we can just draw along the edge, okay, by holding down our mouse and do our best to select something. Now, the more zoomed in you are, the more accurate you'll probably be in this. Okay, the more attention to detail you can include. But I just want to show you guys how this tool works, so we're just going to do a quick outline here. And we'll go around. Getting a little antsy, but that's okay. A little too fast. We missed that edge. That's all right. If we hit enter, we're going to select all of that area we just highlighted. Remember, now we can hold shift to add to this selection. So since I missed some of this edge on the right, I'm just going to hold shift and kind of drag that in as well. Let's add in this whole section. Holding shift, I'll hit enter. Now that's added in. Okay, so a much quicker option. You can always drag and drop, select around instead of fiddling with the magic wand in the different colors, right? Obviously, that color tool wouldn't work very well in this photo since our UFO is very similar to our background here. Okay, but we were able to use our free select tool, right? That lasso. We've selected most of what we wanted here. It's not perfect, but it'll do for a demo. So let's go ahead, let's copy this. I'll paste it to the photo. We'll add to a new layer. And now once again, I have my layer with just the photo that I wanted cut out. Okay, so now we have our layer of a cow. We have our layer of a UFO. We have our layer of a cowgirl. I think you guys know where this is going. Let's combine them and make a fun image. Okay, now we have our layers ready to go and be combined in our main image. So what we can do is just click on our layers, click edit, copy, go over to our main image and paste. You can see it puts our UFO into our cowgirl photo here. We can click the move tool to move that UFO around. We also, since we pasted this in, it is a temporary layer. It's probably a good idea to go ahead and add it to its own layer here. So now we have our UFO in our photo. It has its own layer. It is quite a big UFO compared to the size of our horse and cowgirl here. Okay, we'd like it to be a little more off into the distance. So what we can do with this UFO is use our rescaling option. Okay, so in our toolbar, the fifth one to the right, we can right click here and we'll go to scale. Okay, this lets us resize images. Okay, under scale, I was having some issues where by scaling them down, I was losing a lot of quality on the image. So what you do with any new technology is, if you're not sure, you Google it, you look around, you see if there's some fixes. And it was suggested to me to, instead of using interpolation cubic to scale something down, to switch to no halo. Okay, so we'll try that out. Interpolation, we're going to go no halo. We're going to click on our scale tool. And if I click now on my UFO, it'll give me edges here to resize this image. Okay, now when we're resizing, there's plenty of places you can grab from. I like to grab from a corner. And what that'll do is that'll keep my image proportional. Okay, if you'd like to make your image not proportional, if you'd like to make it maybe really wide or really tall, what you can do is hold shift and it'll allow you to freely kind of rotate here. But you'll see as soon as I let go of shift, it snaps back to that proportion. In this case, let's go with a pretty small UFO, maybe something like that. Okay, it's way off into the distance. I'll hit enter to finish resizing that. I can click on my move tool. Let's reposition this UFO. Maybe it's here, let's say. Okay, and we're abducting this cow. So next we'll need to go get our cow. We can click on our cow image at the top. Click on the layer that we want to copy. Hit edit, copy. And now we can paste our cow layer into this picture here. Okay, notice the cow is quite big. So once again, we're going to need to resize. I also want to turn this cow so it's sideways. So there's an option next to scale called rotate. Why don't we start with that? First, let's make this pasted layer into its own layer. So I'm going to add to new layer. I'm going to use my rotate tool. I'm going to click on my cow. Then we're going to rotate it clockwise 90 degrees here. Okay. So we've rotated our cow. It is still far too big. So after rotation, we're going to scale it down. So we'll click scale next. Click on our cow. Once again, using that corner. And we want a cow small enough to be abducted. So maybe something like that. Okay, we'll hit enter to finalize. Click on our move tool. And we got to go grab our cow. Let's see. Oh, it does let us grab it. Okay, you do lose a little bit of quality when you're resizing things and transforming things because we go from having lots of options to store pixels to much less. So we do have a bit of a blurry cow, but that does kind of give you an idea of how this image editing works. Okay, if I hit enter to finalize that new position, now we have, right, our photo, we have the cowgirl, we have the UFO, and the cow being abducted. Okay. So what else can we add here? Now, the last tool I want to go over is just a tool that will allow you to kind of clean up images at the end. It allows you to kind of add some blurriness to parts of your photo that maybe you don't want to draw the learner's interest to, and to add some sharpness to areas where you do want to draw their interest. Okay. So the blur and sharpness tool is going to be in our toolbox here. It looks like this water drop. And the way this tool works is if I click and drag on something, it will blur it out. And if I hold Control and click and drag, it will sharpen. Okay, or you can also switch between the two down here. But let's say I really want the viewer to focus on the cowgirl and her horse and not as much on the trees in the background or the mountains. So maybe we'll blur out the side a little bit here. So all we'll do, we'll click on our blur tool. We'll make sure we're in the cowgirl layer. And we can just blur out this side a little bit. Okay, so I'm just clicking and holding and dragging. Then over time, this will kind of blur out this section of the photo. Now it's hard to see it live in action. Okay, if I hit undo now, you can see what it looked like before. And if I hit redo, you can see now we blurred that section out. Okay, the flip side, if I want to sharpen, I can hold Control or change my checkbox here. But by holding Control, let's go ahead and sharpen now our image of the cowgirl and maybe the horse. Horse seems important. Okay, and what that does is it sharpens it. It adds kind of more detail to those parts of the photo and kind of tries to accentuate it for us. If I hit undo, you can see what we look like before and after. Okay, so that's what sharpen does. If it's something you don't like, you don't have to do it, obviously, but maybe it adds to your photo a little bit. This is starting to look pretty good. What we can do now is, if we want to finalize this thing, we can come up here. Sorry about that. And go to File and Export As. Okay, so this is how we finalize something. This is how we turn it into a photo. Okay, right now, if we were to File Save As, it saves it as a GIMP file type so that you can open up this editor and get all these layers and all this good stuff. But if we say, okay, we're done, make it into a photo, I need to go File and Export As. Okay, and maybe we'll call this cowgirl meme. There's a lot of different file types. Okay, if I select by file type down here, you can see all the different types of images that this thing can open. Okay, probably some of the most used when we're talking file types is GIF. Okay, GIF. GIF images are very good at showing either a still image or a small animated image. Okay, so if you're showing like a 5-second clip and you want no sound, GIFs are really useful there. The next big one you'll see used is a JPEG. This is kind of the all-around image. I would suggest exporting as JPEG most of the time. It's kind of just a very good image file type. It's very useful for a lot of different tools. Pretty much everything can work with JPEGs. If we keep going, pings, PNG, is very good if you're trying to save an image without a background. Okay, so our cow or our UFO, when we cut out that background, if we wanted to just have that kind of primary structure, a ping is very good at that. It's used a lot on internet images when we don't want to have that background. And let's see, are there any more here that we need to talk about? I think those are the main ones. But when in doubt, save it as a JPEG, which is .jpg or JPEG, which we see is already set. So this is fine. So we'll just name it. We can name it whatever we want and hit export. Okay, we get lots of different options for quality and how to save it and what data to include. Okay, for now, we can just leave this all as the default and hit export. Okay, so that's our new content for today. There are some tasks for you guys to knock out still. There's a little bit of reading. I found an article on Image Editing 101 that talks about how to make basic adjustments. And I'd like you guys to check out the first 2 sections of that. I think they do a really good job of showing not only the basic editing principles, but how and why to use them and explaining them a little bit. So definitely worth checking out there. To extend your learning, I have a couple videos on how to use GIMP. There's a beginner's video, and there's one specifically on removing backgrounds. So if that's something you're interested in, check those out. As always, there's a practice quiz, so try that out if you'd like to kind of test your knowledge on some of these subjects. And finally, our assignment for the day is we're going to keep working on that instructional image portfolio. Today is part 2, where we're going to take some of the pictures you took last time and we're going to edit some of them using the skills we learned today. And feel free to edit them in GIMP if you like the idea of GIMP, or Photoshop or Paint or whatever editor you have available. that you would prefer. All right, now just to follow up on those tasks, here's what your reading looks like today. Okay, there's an introduction here on cropping, resizing, rotating, and so on. And then they really get into the lesson. This website shows you the Pixlr app as they go through all these different functions, but I think they do a really good job of showing kind of how and why to use these different techniques. So I think it is worth checking out. You can try out that Pixlr app if you'd like, but you don't necessarily have to. Okay, so feel free to use whatever photo editor you'd like. For this page, I'd like you just to read down to the bottom. This is kind of the first section, I would call it. And then after you read that, hit continue just one time. Okay, and there'll be another section that talks about adjusting, making the different adjustments as we're photo editing. Okay, but try both of those out. Check them out, kind of read through that. Hopefully it makes sense. They do a really good job of showing kind of the different image concepts, I think, in this article. And then if you get to that second continue, it gets into photo sharing. So this is where I'd like you to stop. So you don't have to read this section on photo sharing options. But just, I think everything before that does a really good job of showing the basic photo edits and why we would do them, and it gives a lot of really good examples. So check that out. And we also have our portfolio, so we'll take a look at that, and then I will turn you guys loose. Okay, and your last task for the day, the assignment, right? The portfolio part 2, where we're showing off some editing skills. Yeah, you can use any photo editor you'd like. We're going to edit some of the pictures we took in part 1 to show off our new editing techniques. Okay, just keep in mind, I'd like you to save the before and after version of these pictures. Okay, so that we can kind of show that editing in action and how it looks. Okay, so the type of edits you're going to be making, I want you to show me an example of you cropping a photo, resizing a photo, and rotating a photo. I'd like you to show me a photo where the brightness and contrast has been corrected, where the color and saturation has been edited, and finally the blur and contrast. And then finally, as far as layering images go, I'd like you to show me that you can remove a background from an image, that you're able to insert that image into a different image, and then finally we're going to add some text to that image. Okay, so these are kind of the 9 tools that I'd like you to show me today. So go ahead, download a photo editor if you don't have one, try these out, reach out to me if you get stuck on anything, and then have a wonderful day.